Welcome to Michigan Wormworks. My name is Elena Warson, and I am the founder, owner, and operator here at Michigan Wormworks in Manistee. We're standing in a 2,500 square foot warehouse, a former small machine repair factory turned worm factory. Here are 2 worm beds. They're 16 feet by 4 feet, and they are continuous flow through vermicomposting machines manufactured in Novi, Michigan by a company called Michigan Soil Works. The worms, which are red wigglers, the species is Eisenia fetida. They live, eat, reproduce, and poop in these machines, and their castings come out the bottom, and that is the finished product that I then sell to customers. If you're like me a couple years ago, then you're not really familiar with vermicompost. It is a soil amendment that its main value is the biology that it adds to the soil. It contributes to a healthy soil ecosystem, and it makes nutrients more bioavailable to plants. It imparts some disease resistance to soil-borne diseases. It also, if you add it as a foliar spray, it can help combat things like mildew and other pests. Apparently, I recently learned this at a soil health seminar in Traverse City. It's like super good at giving defense against undesirable nematodes. It is full of beneficial nematodes which outcompete them. When you're planting in your garden, you can use vermicompost just by adding a handful of it to the planting hole, or like right on top of the seed or around the root zone of the transplant that you're putting in the hole. You can also top dress or side dress your plants, your existing plants with it. You can make a tea with it and water it onto your plants, or spray it as if watering, or you can make an extract and apply that also. For people who are planting in pots, you would want to have about 20% worm castings in your soil mix. Just cutting into some worm food here. It is a pre-composted mixture of food waste and farm waste. It's pre-composted to eliminate weed seeds and pathogens. So it's been hot composted, allowed to heat up to a thermophilic state with a certain temperature for a certain amount of time to achieve that. And then before it's completely finished, the hot composting process is paused, allowed to cool down, and then we feed it to the worms. And the worms really like this. Compost comes from Krull's Composting in Maple City, and a major component of it is food waste collected by BARC, Bay Area Recycling for Charities. And it's collected from places like Oriana and Higher Grounds. And then I buy it from Krull's Composting, and it's delivered here. This is a really great product, and it's working really well for us. And we're also actively seeking a local source of high quality waste from closer to Manistee. So we're looking for somebody who has the will and the space and the means to generate worm food out of local waste. And we will be a large volume, regular paying customer for that person. To get the food from this giant box to our worm beds, we have to shovel it like this. Recently, we acquired a feedstock conveyor, but there's still a lot of shoveling involved. When I shovel this, I can see all kinds of good stuff. I can see there's woody material. I can see the remnants of some food scraps. Sometimes there's undigested things like avocado peels and pits and things like that. I can see evidence of some fungal activity in here, which is very beneficial. But I also find evidence of our imperfect composting infrastructure. I sometimes find things like ketchup packets or the liners from allegedly compostable cups. There's a need to have better sorting of post-consumer compostable material, but we're not going to let perfect get in the way of good. So I'm more than happy to sort through this later if it means that some of our organic waste is being composted instead of going to the landfill. After I feed the worms, I add the food, I use this tool to spread it in an even layer. And every time I feed the worms, I'll add probably about 4 or 5 wheelbarrows full of the compost that I'm putting on top. The beautiful thing about these continuous flow-through worm beds is that they are designed to take advantage of the worms' natural habits. They actually eat the microbes that are feeding on the decaying material, and they like to feed at the surface. So they reside in the top few inches of this material. And then as they feed their castings, which are denser than this loose, fluffy compost, sink to the bottom. And the worms continue working up here. And as I add more food, about once a week, the worms happily feed at the top. Meanwhile, their poop, the castings, is at the bottom, and I can easily harvest it off the bottom through the grate without disturbing the worms at the top. Well, there's a motor that causes a cutting bar to run across the length of the bottom of the worm bed. And as the cutting bar passes along, it shaves off about 3 inches of material, mainly worm castings, and that falls to the floor. I send the cutting bar across in one direction, and then I send it back. And that is a complete harvest. The material that comes out is mainly worm castings, a little bit of additional organic material, and then sometimes things that weren't digested. That's where you get like the little pieces of compostable cup, things like that. There are a few worms in there. Out of hundreds of thousands of worms, there are a few, and the sifting process catches those also so that I don't lose my livestock. So the next step of the process to getting the castings ready for sale is to rake out the finished castings that we harvested. They're under the worm bed here. And the ones I'm raking here, I harvested the end of last week, or maybe over the weekend. So they've been sitting for just a few days. That allows them to dry enough to make them easier to handle. It's satisfying to see the food waste and farm waste converted into this nice dark brown, fluffy vermicompost. I got this through the crosshatch microloan. The good stuff is in the cart. And this is the beautiful worm castings vermicompost that I will package for sale. Over here is the stuff that didn't go through. I have a rubber band, a piece of cardboard carton, some produce stickers, a few worms, and then also some really good stuff. And this can be returned to the worm beds to go another pass through. And eventually it will see its day as the premium worm castings that it aspires to be. You can see little bits of other organic material in there. That's why we call it vermicompost. Technically, it's not pure worm castings. It smells good. It feels good. It looks good. It grows good. After sifting the worm castings, I package them for sale. Sometimes I sell them in 5-gallon buckets. Other times I sell them in bulk. So a lot of my time is spent emptying 5-gallon buckets into these super sacks, because that's how I measure that I have a cubic yard. Customers, this time of year and getting ready for spring planting, I sell a lot of bulk quantities to growers or people who make their own soil mix. Other times of year, I sell to home gardeners, and then I sell a lot of 5-gallon quantities. I also sell these smaller packages. It's about a half-gallon. There are some benefits to buying locally produced worm casting. One of the main ones is that if it's made from local resources, it's going to be basically better adapted to the same environment that your plants are trying to thrive in. But also you're helping support not just me, a small business person with a dream and a family, but you're also supporting the local circular economy. So municipalities often collect like yard waste. Here in Manistee, there's no food scrap compost collection, but there's yard waste collection. And it's not easy to sustain, for municipalities to sustain those programs, because there's a lot of expenses involved and the finished product isn't that marketable. By contrast, I'm selling these worm castings to customers. I'm producing a higher value product and reaching end markets for it. I'm helping make it financially sustainable for Krull's composting to compost farm waste and food waste. I'm helping make it financially sustainable for Bark to collect food scraps. The more support I get from the community, the more support I can offer to those organizations that supply me with the compost and that provide our communities with an invaluable service of collecting, hauling, and composting that waste that we all generate. Thanks for visiting. Stay wiggly, worm friends.